Vecna, Eve of Ruin has finally been released, at least for early access at the moment. This book has been something that I have been looking forward to for quite some time, and I'm sure that I'm not alone in that sentiment. Anytime that we get official content that allows players to get to experience more of what the game has to offer, and in this case, high-level play, I think that's a great opportunity for everyone. For anyone that doesn't know, Vecna, Eve of Ruin is a campaign that takes players from levels 10 through 20 and has them traversing the plains in an effort to defeat Vecna, the Archlich. I haven't actually had the opportunity to read through the entire campaign yet, but I am hoping to get a review up relatively soon if people would be interested in seeing that. So let me know. Anyway, what stood out to me is that this book includes 30 new creatures, many of which have some interesting designs, and that's what I wanted to look at today. We are only a few months away from the release of the new Player's Handbook and less than a year away from the new Monster Manual, so I wanted to see if we could examine some of the creatures in this book to see if they're giving away any hints or secrets as to what we might expect from the upcoming releases. A quick note, I'm not going to be able to go through all of the creatures here, it would just take too long. I will, however, be going over many of the new interesting ones that have some strong and cohesive designs, and point out some commonalities and trends that I think could be indicative of things that we might see in the future. Hey, I'm currently like 75 subscribers away from breaking 7,000, so if you'd like to help me get there, a sub to the channel would really be amazing. Shout out to my members, Julian in the Champion tier, Jackal3 and Jumpy Sonic Bear in the Hero tier, and Julio, Siren XY, Brain Laborx, Nathan, and D&D Unoptimized in the Warrior tier. Your support is incredibly appreciated, so thank you all so much. If you like what I do and want to help me out for as little as $1 per month, click on the join button. Thanks. Alright, so this list is going to be alphabetical, so let's get started. First up is the Blade Scout. While this creature has reasonable stats on its own with an AC of 18 and 105 hit points and resistance to poison damage, what stands out to me is the fact that it has pack tactics. I could be very wrong, but I am pretty sure this is either the highest CR or at least among the highest CR creatures to have this trait. It's typically given to lower challenge rating creatures, those that kind of might swarm, and ones that aren't going to be doing significant damage in a single turn, as having a very easy way of gaining advantage on attacks can be an incredibly potent effect. Given that the Blade Scout can deal an average damage of 36 across its 3 attacks, making those attacks at advantage can be brutal. This is quite strong for a CR7, which is a pretty underwhelming challenge rating overall, like I noted in my Deadliest Monsters video. The Blade Scout also has the bonus action Dash, which allows it to move up to its speed without provoking opportunity attacks. This is also just good. It effectively doubles the creature's movement and allows it to either get out of danger quickly or swoop in for other attacks. Next up is the Blaze Bear. This CR12 creature has a sturdy hit point pool at 189, but a fairly low armor class of 14, but it definitely makes up for it. It has magic resistance, giving it advantage on saves against spells and other magical effects, and it also has Mist Sight, a trait I don't think I've seen before, which allows it to see through heavily obscured areas created by mist or fog, including the Fog Cloud spell. The really interesting thing to me about the Blaze Bear is its reaction, Anti-Magic Swipe. This is like Counterspell on a stick, and it's super cool. The bear targets a creature within 10 feet of it that's casting a spell of 3rd level or lower, dealing 4d10 force damage to the creature. Then the target needs to succeed on a DC 15 intelligence saving throw, and if the creature fails, the spell takes no effect. This is obviously a very powerful effect, combining damage with a counterspell ability, but given the range and the spell level limitation, I have to admit that I like it a lot. Designs like this that are interesting and make you think about the battlefield in different ways and reward largely otherwise melee creatures for getting in range of spellcasters are things that I appreciate when evaluating these types of creatures. A few other things to mention about the Blaze Bear are its ability to stun not 1, but 2 creatures within 120 feet of it on a failed DC 15 wisdom saving throw. I've been through my concerns about the stun condition in a previous video, so I'm not going to go into it here, other than to note that it is still very present in creature design. I'm just hoping that they print ways to end the condition. The other thing to note is that its bite attack also deals force damage. It's worth bringing this up as the idea of creatures dealing magical damage in more recent books is something that I always see a lot of pushback on, and let me assure you that the Blaze Bear is far from the only creature in this book that adds magic and or elemental damage in a lot of different places. Next is the Death Wolf. This CR15 creature doesn't have the best stats given its challenge rating, sitting at 15 AC and 158 hit points, but it does have some cool abilities. It is straight up immune to poison and bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage from non-magical weapons that aren't silvered though, so that definitely helps the survivability. Anyways, its bite attack also deals both piercing and necrotic damage, but it also imposes a DC 16 wisdom saving throw, failing which creatures have disadvantage on saving throws against the frightened condition, which lasts until a remove curse spell is cast on the creature. This is such a cool idea since the save doesn't necessarily do much on its own, but it can last for a really long time and combos extremely well with the Phantom Deathwolf ability, which is essentially just a better Phantasmal Killer spell. It's got a shorter range, but it doesn't require 2 saves, and it targets a better save from the caster's perspective, that being intelligence, and there's a chance that the target always has disadvantage on making this save. On its own, this ability can legitimately kill an entire party without the Deathwolf needing to do anything else. If your group gets unlucky, this can be deadly. As a side note, I love seeing abilities work in conjunction with each other on creatures. Like how the bite attack here gives disadvantage against frightened, and then the Phantom Deathwolf ability generates a frightened effect. It's obviously not the first time that we're seeing this kind of thing, but it is a common trend that we are seeing to come up more and more often, including in many of these monsters, and it is so good to see. It makes the creatures feel more cohesive and well-rounded, and makes them even more fun to run. It helps them give them more of an identity. Next is the False Lich. This is a CR 21 creature, and it just seems really good, which you'll love to see in the high CR range. It's got an AC of 18, 199 hit points, immunity to necrotic, poison, psychic, and bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage from non-magical attacks, plus a whole bunch of conditions, as well as having the magic resistance trait. Its Death Rend also deals necrotic damage, but where things get really spicy is with Blood-Curdling Lament. This is kinda like the Banshee's Wail ability, except that it's on a recharge instead of being once per day, and though it doesn't set the target's hit points to 0, the effect is still quite good. Creatures that fail the DC 22 Wisdom saving throw are both frightened and unconscious, which is obviously good on its own, allowing for a lot of potential critical hits here. But again, more importantly, it combos so nicely with its Soul Siphon bonus action. This lets the False Lich target creatures within 120 feet and subject them to a DC 22 Charisma saving throw. And if they fail that, they take 6d6 force damage, and if it ends up leaving a creature with 0 hit points, it dies immediately and has its soul trapped in the gemstone of the eyes of the False Lich. If the Lich is then killed within 24 hours, the soul and the body reappear, but the affected creature is still just fully dead. Also, its spell list is really good. I want to touch on the Granite Juggernaut next. I thought its movement was interesting, being limited to being 30 feet in a straight line. This is similar to what we saw with the Stone Juggernaut and a few other creatures that have unique movement limitations. But I always find these so cool as again, it helps give the creature some definition and something that players may be able to figure out and pick up on during the battle that can make them feel smart and also be able to utilize it to their advantage tactically. Small and subtle but impactful elements of design like this are things that I hope to see so much more of moving forward. The other two things to mention about the Granite Juggernaut are, again, the amazing way that its slam attack and its devastating roll bonus action piggyback off of each other. I'm also a big fan of seeing strength saving throws being used. It's something of a pet peeve of mine, and I'm sure many people that play the game, that so many effects just use a few abilities for saves. But there are quite a few targeting a wider variety of saves in this book, including strength, intelligence, and charisma. Next up is the Spider Dragon. The biggest reason I wanted to talk about this is because the art for it is actually incredible and physically repulses me. It's disgusting in the best possible way, so I guess big shout out to the artist who worked on this creature. The Spider Dragon itself isn't that noteworthy other than its Stifling Web's bonus action, which is more or less the effect from the web spell, which can be extremely powerful in the right circumstances. The final creature in the book that I wanted to talk about is the Quavalithku Spider Fiend, mostly because its bonus action, Assess Weakness, is basically just True Strike without the downside of costing your entire turn, and that kind of made me laugh. The one thing that I am a bit disappointed about is that we didn't get a new Vecna stat block. I know one was released back in 2022 with the Vecna dossier, but even though it's not a bad stat block, it still just feels a bit underwhelming to me to match a creature of Vecna's power and reputation. And especially considering that this book is entirely focused on Vecna himself, I do wish that we would have got a brand new stat block to celebrate that. This is especially true as Jeremy Crawford and Chris Perkins have both suggested a few times now that Vecna will be something of a recurring villain over the next chapter of the game, so getting something fresh and representative of his true power would have been great to see, but here we are. As far as overarching trends go and what we might be able to expect from the forthcoming monster manual, I guess we'll be seeing a significant increase in magical and elemental damage. I recognize that many of the creatures in this book are at higher challenge ratings given that the module is targeted to characters from 10th to 20th level, but even among those, these additional damage types feel so much more prevalent than they have in the past. It's worth pointing this out as barbarians in particular will be affected by this change, given that their rage damage reduction will be less powerful than it has been in the past, but maybe that's not so bad either. Anyway, this update to design language is nice to see, and especially considering that they do seem to be touching on less common elemental damage types like acid, radiant, and force. Secondly, and like I mentioned earlier, a widening of the array of common saving throws seems to be on the horizon. Even if they aren't necessarily integrated in spells, which I do hope that they are, many creatures have been given new abilities that target strength, intelligence, and charisma saves. We have 6 ability scores in the game, so it's nice to see that the designers are finally making the effort to utilize them more frequently to create new and flavorful effects. Finally, and something that came up frequently through this video, were monster abilities or traits or actions and bonus actions that worked well in conjunction with each other and leveraged the impacts that another might have had. These can be potentially dangerous types of effects to create or design, as if there are multiple types of the same creature during a single encounter, all benefiting from the same abilities, it can snowball very quickly. But provided the abilities aren't completely devastating and instead just help to create a stronger sense of urgency by imposing a status condition or deal a bit more damage or give disadvantage on certain things, I think it can be an incredible design tool to help get the most out of the monsters in the game and help differentiate them more from one another. Overall, I'm pretty happy with what I've seen so far with the monsters in Vecna Eve of Ruin, but I am looking forward to reading through it to see if it delivers the first truly good high-level experience in 5th edition from an officially published adventure. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to help me hit 7,000. I am so close. Check out some of my other D&D videos, but otherwise, take care.